Talk about what the real challenges are in running a white label shop. Because it's hard enough to run an agency, but if you're having to run the execution across multiple agencies, what are some of the things that people can appreciate and they'll say, aha. Mr. Josh, how you doing, my friend?
Man, I am awesome. If I was any better, I'd have to pinch myself.
Is this a reality or a simulation?
It could be half and half. Like sometimes let's call it advanced truth, future truth.
What can we do in the next 30 minutes that would make you look good?
What can we do in the next 30 minutes to make you look good? Because when you look good, I'll look good and everything will just kind of work it in.
You both look good.
That's a good question. So I'll tell you, I've got a couple interesting ideas. So we're prepping to go to a trade show for the major sign association trade show coming up. And we've got a 30-minute session to talk about basically whatever we want. I got to think, like, what are some of the big things that most businesses need that aren't doing? And I got to thinking, okay, a lot of times, okay, so there's 3 ways to grow business. You've got getting more customers, you got them coming back more often, and then you have an increase in order value. So if we're looking at within those 3 frameworks, most of the time, the retention piece is the part that gets left out. We always focus on acquisition. Yep. So how do we use automation to get people to come back in? So that was my thought process on what I might do down there. And I don't know if it's good for here because I really didn't prepare anything for it, but
sure it is. We talk all about Sign Shop Marketing Pro and talk about white label ad factory and all the things that you do to put in place processes to increase that retention. Yeah. Which is not just for Sign Shop people, but anybody who has an agency or some kind of recurring revenue stream.
I think that's the big win out of everything, is that when you have things that you can cross over, right, into a variety of segments. It's sure we're doing it in the sign business or we're doing it in a white label business or whatnot, but how can you take that and apply these things that we're doing into your business and for your clients? And I think that, does it make sense to try to do something that is a little more generic and universal? I don't want to come here and say, okay, this should not be self-serving, and that is not what the purpose of it was at all. So that's the question. As your audience, you know the people that are going to be watching, what is it like? And you know some of my skill sets. So what is it that you feel like that I could give to them that would make sense for your audience?
Talk about what the real challenges are in running a white label shop. Because it's hard enough to run an agency, but if you're having to run the execution across multiple agencies, what are some of the things that people can appreciate? And they'll say, aha, I see. And then if they see you operating at the pro level, where you're doing multiple agencies, certainly they can handle their one, or
fair enough,
adopt the processes and have outsource. Ultimately, people don't know how to outsource.
I think that I bought a domain a while back called Winning with White Label to teach people how to win with white label, because whether it's SEO or anything. So I can certainly see, just pinning back, here's the common problems that we see happen. Number one, most people, they'll say, we want a white label, and then they hand it over and then they treat it like some redheaded stepchild that they don't ever tend to. And that's not a good idea either. We could certainly make that play. All right, cool.
You got some stories, some specifics, some numbers, some things will make people go.
Let me think through the process on it here for just a second. The challenge is most of the problems that people have with white label in general all stem from, it's hard to quantify sometimes in terms of a number base. Now, when you hear it, if I say, listen, how many of you have actually went through and white labeled something and said, oh, we purchased the product and then just went through and then we didn't follow up on it? That should be an extension of your team. It's not necessarily one of those things that you can really put a number to, but people understand it when you see it. They're like, yeah, I did that.
How about the 5 ways that you can screw up in white labeling?
Okay.
And we cut them up into 5 1-minute videos.
Okay. You know what? We could do that. Give me just 1 second. Let me get a note here. And let me just jot down a few things real quick and we'll capture our thoughts, and then we can absolutely make that work.
Yeah. I figure that secondhand, water off the duck's back.
I'll tell you, with the day that I've had today, and I don't know if you've ever had these or not, but it's all of my mental brain power went to dealing with putting out fires today. So I just want to make sure that we're clear and concise and we don't get off track whenever I'm talking. A lot of times it's just you'll have better results out of me if that's what I can do for you.
All right.
It's like tending to a garden. I'll give you a short 5 bullet points of the biggest things that I see that are inside of the thing. So number one is not having a management system to deal with white label in general, right? So you're white labeling stuff out. You don't have a reporting process. You don't have a management process. You don't have anything that you just say, okay, we buy the service and it takes care of itself, and it doesn't. You're
Okay.
really using white label as a way to be an extension of your team. So just like a team, you have to basically treat them exactly the same and have the same expectations. So number two, not setting the proper expectations for your clients. You've got to be able to have a good relationship with your white label partner or provider so that they can help you set the proper expectations. Otherwise, you're never going to keep clients. It's just going to be really difficult, and there are going to be some difficult conversations that happen whenever they were expecting X and you provided Y. Number three, not having a streamlined onboarding process. Probably the biggest thing that we see whenever people are white labeling is that they purchase the particular product and it takes them 3 weeks to get all the information collected. And what that does is, okay, you're already 1 month in. Now what? Now we're having to jump through hoops, and we're having to really do a lot more work, and mistakes happen whenever you have a condensed timeline because now you're trying to keep the client happy.
Yep.
Number four, really not taking ownership of the relationship that you have with your clients. And what I mean by that is a lot of times people will expect, they ask us all the time, hey, can you come on this phone call? Can you do this? And sure, we'll come on there with you, but you need to absolutely have ownership of what that relationship is. You don't, in my opinion, you don't really want to let that go for anybody. And the people who are looking for that they've come to us and have talked to us like, this is what we did in the past, it wasn't successful, whatever. Most of the time, that's what's happened. They didn't own that relationship and they let somebody else basically tend to that. And
Yep.
then the last thing, and this may be part of the one before,
Mhm.
not listening and being an expert for your clients. So a lot of times people come to us, and we've done a lot of work for a lot of different people from an agency perspective. We're involved with a lot of different industries. We can pretty well tell you, at least on per platform basis, the types of things that are going to work, the offers, the promotions. Now, every market's going to be different, but a lot of times people don't listen and they're like, our client wants to do this. I'm like, listen, if you want to make sure that your client gets the best results possible, let's start with the proven stuff first, and then we'll tweak. Then we'll try other things. But we really want to try to get them those quick wins. And if you don't give them the opportunity to get those quick wins, they're not going to stick around for very long. And as a white label provider, that's the one thing for me that I have no control over. I don't have any control over retention. The only thing I can do is give you the best advice that I can to help you retain. But at the end of the day, I don't have any control over that piece.
Because you're the cook in the kitchen, and if the waiter doesn't do their job, what are you going to do?
That's it. Whenever we work through the process on those are the really the big, I think the big rocks to where people were to say, own the relationship, they own the process, they own, if you want to boil it down, owning the relationship and own the process. Everything else is just an offshoot of that. If they don't do that, it is still part of an agency. Now, if they do it the right way, sometimes people get started with some white label and then they bring it in-house. And of course, that's always what I say is it's white label sometimes is a lose-lose proposition. If you do a really good job, you're going to lose them at some point because they bring it in-house, because it can be done cheaper. I get it. It's a economic thing. But if you do a bad job, you're going to get fired too. It's one of those things where you're fighting in the middle ground. But if they truly want to win with the white label and they just want to sell and they want to focus on that piece, there also still has to be just a little bit of operations. It's kind of like the junction going between the engine and the transmission, right? It's like there's no junction there that says, okay, how does this work together? Then it's just going to fall apart. So anyway, those are the big things that I think for the most part, that's the top 5 things that people get wrong, that if they went into it with a different mindset and understanding those things, they would have a vastly improved experience with most white label or contractor type experiences.
Now, what if they don't have a great onboarding process and they want one? Do you have one to share as an example they could template from or borrow from?
I do, but it's not prep, but it is something that I can put together that you can provide a link to.
I'd love to.
So that would be something that we can do maybe with a high level snapshot or something like that. So what we do most of the time when an agency comes into us, we actually talk to them about their onboarding process, and most of them have the same thing. It doesn't exist. And we'll actually go through, if they don't have a high level or they don't have some of those tools, we'll actually give
Mhm.
them an account and we'll build their onboarding, because what I want is that whenever somebody comes through their system, they fill out their agreement, they pay all that stuff. I want it to come directly to me, just like I was just part of the process. So just like I was an internal part of the team, I was an extension. So those things can be done. And we do have those things I can anonymize and share.
Yeah, that'd be great. Tons of value. People would come to that just for those pieces.
Yep, it's and then as far as the other things go, we've probably got some processes that we can help out either with ClickUp. We might have some Monday assets as well. I don't remember if we put it together, because when we started with one and moved to the other, I can't remember which one it was. But as far as owning the process and the communication and that type of thing and what they have, we probably got some of those things as well. Now we just pipe people into Slack and just have them as part of our internal thing. But that's having that communication method, and that's going to vary between everybody.
So let's talk about when things go wrong with the client and how you, as the cook in the kitchen, can troubleshoot what's going on. So if you're the cook in the kitchen, and let's just say the agency owner is the restaurant owner, because everyone wants to start a restaurant because friends tell them, oh, you cook so good, you should start an Italian restaurant. And so people lie to their friends to be polite, right?
Yep.
So we start a restaurant, and in the restaurant, we have these waiters that talk to the customers, usually a bubbly 18-year-old girl who's friendly, but she doesn't know the menu. She doesn't know how to understand dietary preferences. Maybe some of the customers, they're allergic to certain things, or maybe the menu items were described improperly. Like the waiter or waitress doesn't know what the soup of the day is, or doesn't know what exactly is in the salad, right? So the waiter does a poor job in, maybe you sit down as a customer, not you, because you're in the kitchen, but the customer comes and they sit down and they wait 20 minutes before finally the waiter comes. And you know what that's like, right? You're hungry and you're waiting. Yes. And then finally, and then you can tell they don't even really care, and they get your order wrong. They write the wrong thing down and they give it to the cook, and you're the cook in the back of the kitchen, and you know some things aren't going quite right in the front. So it could be that the client's already pissed because it's been such a long time. The expectations weren't proper between the salesperson, who's usually the account manager, and what's actually being delivered, because it was sold as this gigantic mound of ribs when really you get 3 little riblets, right? And it wasn't your fault, because that you're doing what's according to the menu. Or they don't even have a menu, and the customer said, well, I'll just take whatever, and the waiter just writes whatever and then gives whatever to you in the back and then blames you when you give them food back, and this is not what I ordered. Yeah, but you said whatever. So how do you, or it could also be that the client is a jerk, and no matter what you do, they're not going to be happy because their expectations are unrealistic.
Yep.
So then you, as the cook in the kitchen, or your team of cooks in the kitchen, providing these culinary services to all of these restaurants. Is that a fair analogy, right?
I think so. I think it's a fair analogy. And it's really interesting that you bring it up that way, because what we look at, if you look at a coworker, that you're a partner, right? You've got to do your part, and then we're going to do our part. And then this whole thing put together generates an experience for the client or the customer or the patron that should leave them, number one, satisfied and wanting to tell other people about what it is that you do. Now, largely in the marketing space, that's going to be about results.
Right.
But what I will tell you is that it's not always about results. I can tell you that we've lost clients before because we got them too good of results that they couldn't handle. They didn't have the infrastructure built to be able to handle the leads that came in. Okay, we didn't get to keep them. So there is that blend of things that happen, that I think the biggest thing that needs to, when those things happen, the most important thing is to make sure that you have a partner. That so in the kitchen, you've got partners that are sitting there saying, okay, we want to fix this as quickly as possible. And if you've got a white label partner that's willing to do that, then listen, you can work through the details. Now, the most important thing is isolating whatever the root problem was and being able to get it fixed. So for example, we don't have a menu. Okay, so the very first thing that you're going to have to do is work with the staff in order to develop a menu to say, here's the ingredients we have, here's the things we can make, let's document those things so that now you have a better understanding, right? And working through the process there. If they come through and they say, we just have a jerk of a client, well, there's a couple of different things. If you've got somebody who's a true win-win partner, then they're going to say, okay, what do we need to do to fix it? based on what the client recommends, right? So, hey, Mr. Client, what's going to make you happy? Cool. I understand you're not happy. What will make you happy? And see if there's a way to do it. Now, listen, there's going to be times where you can just say, no, that's not going to be something. We're just going to refund your money and go. But most of the time, you can have some solution that you can work with. So the kitchen is going to be a super important piece to that, because obviously they're fulfilling on whatever the server is promising.
Right.
But if you have a good partner, if you've got a good cook, or if you got a good chef and you have a good sous chef and you have good staff, then it makes problem solving much simpler, because they're going to have options and different ways to solve those problems. And that's a lot of the things that we do. Is, yes, I could tell you, okay, they're not getting the results. So what's their CTR? What's the conversion rate? What's the cost per click? Usually those three numbers will tell you, okay, is this an ad problem? That's an offer. It's not resonating. Is this a landing page issue? Is this a sales issue? Which, again, we're not having a lot of control over that part of it.
Right.
But if you've got good quality people in the kitchen, it's going to make those problems in the front of the house way simpler to fix. And it's going to allow you to solve the problems quicker, so that in the future you don't have that. And again, you can continue to build a sustainable restaurant or a sustainable agency or whatever type of business that you have. It's all relatively the same.
So you're the cook in the kitchen. And the difference with this kind of restaurant is the customer has to provide the ingredients, BYOB, because they have to create content.
Yes.
So there's no way, as far as I know, that you can service a client without them having some kind of content, some kind of offer, something that has to come from them. And then you, even as the best Gordon Ramsay chef with all the equipment and all the knives and all the best stuff, Viking ranges and whatnot, if the customer gives you chicken poo, you're not going to turn it into chicken salad.
Yeah, it's going to be a little difficult.
And then what if the account manager is junior and then they've lost control? Maybe there is a process, but they're not really on top of it. What do you do in that situation? Can you reach through to the client? Do you escalate to the manager or the agency owner because the account manager doesn't know what they're doing? We see this all the time where account management fails as the in-between between the client and fulfillment where you are. How do you handle that? This happens all the time. This just happened to us.
I think the biggest solution to that, when there's a failure on the account management level or on that side, is that you have to bring management in. It would be the same thing in a restaurant. Okay, you've got an issue with a server. You're going to bring in the front of the house manager to try to deal with that, and they're going to have a variety of solutions that they can already do. In this case, I think the agency owners, or at least some sort of senior management, has to come in. And we're probably going to be getting on the phone call with them as well as the specialist. So as we're talking to them and saying, okay, we don't, from a white label perspective, we don't take ownership of the experience that they have, but there are some things that we are uniquely qualified from an informational process to say, okay, we'll hop on a call with your client as long as you're there, and you guys can work through the process on it. We've saved several accounts just because they had that option. Does it happen all the time? Not, I wouldn't say regularly, but it is one of those things to where you've got to have that part. And sometimes just bring in a specialist. And this is going to sound, this may sound really bad, but sometimes whenever you have somebody that knows what they're talking about and can actually explain it, that the person backs off just a little bit, because it's like, okay, you know what you're doing, and how do I fix it? Most of the time, that's the response we get, is like, okay, I understand what you're saying now that you've explained the cogs of what's happening.
Yeah.
And then I can say, here's where we need to go. So we need better content. If we need videos to do this, if we need photos of your staff or location, that's what we need. If you don't get those things for us, you're probably going to see a lot of the same underperforming or underwhelming results that you're looking for. And it can happen, but you are part of the process.
So Josh, you've been doing the white label ad thing for a long time. How many clients do you have and how many agencies is that?
We are, for our white label business, we're a little bit different than what a lot of places do. A lot of times you'll find white label companies that are very volume driven.
Yeah.
So they're just looking for this enormous amount of clients. And sometimes, most of the time, they're going to be on the cheaper end because they're making that volume play. For us, we cap so we keep our agency, actually the agencies we work with, we cap it at 25. Now, obviously they've got a lot of things that are built within that, and of course, right now we've got a little bit of a waiting list So as people drop off, because it happens from time to time, and then we just pick people back up. But the reason we do that is because we want people as partners. We don't want people as just a transactional relationship. And that is also one of the reasons why that I feel like that the things that we do and the results we get usually are a little better than maybe some of the others, because we care about what it is and we've
Yeah.
purposely limited to that. Now, with that being said, for what we do, we have to be good, because I've decided to say we're just going to be limited to just this amount of work. So if we start losing people and we work through that, then it becomes a much bigger issue. But that's the reason we do that part in the white label, just because, hey, we want a small number of people that we can do really good work for. I'll tell you the biggest reason for that is that you've seen this as well, is that people come from corporate America, or they'll come from a variety of places and like, hey, this digital marketing thing is an easy thing to get into, low barrier of entry. Let's go ahead and get into this. And how many times have people been burned by people and it's not necessarily their fault, but there's a lot of people that's been burned, and we just wanted to give people an opportunity that they didn't have to have that. I wanted to make it available to people, but in order to do it at that level, we've got to make sure that now we're in the process. Like right now, it started at 15 and we bumped it to 25. And then as we go, it's going to become, and as our systems and processes, because it's a little heavier handed in terms of what we do for people over time, that's going to allow us to continue to grow and add people. But we just want to do that on a very managed level. It's not just like, okay, in a year, I need 600 employees and all that. It's just, so we just keep it dialed down a little bit.
How can you tell whether a white label partner is good or not?
That's
you look for, right? That's like asking a mechanic, how can you tell if that other mechanic is good? So your opinion as an expert would be more than some random person who watches YouTube videos or some random agency on.
For sure. So what I'll tell you is I'll tell you a couple of things that most people do that you probably shouldn't. Number one, the first things that people look at is case studies. And we really shouldn't have to say this, but if people are using case studies, they're probably only going to show you the best case studies.
Of course.
Using case studies to judge whether that's a good fit or not, probably not the best way to go about and do that. Personally, I feel like the best way is to just say, okay, if you're interested in working with somebody on the very front end, if they specialize in an industry that you're working with, okay, if you're working with home services and roofing, and they have experience in that, that's probably more important than just about anything, because you're going to have a lot less of a learning curve, and they can probably help you more, especially if you're a newer agency. They can provide a lot of insights because they're running more accounts. But number two, really what it comes down to is try one account. So I'll just give you a kind of an idea, because I'm a white label company on the ad side, but let's say whenever it comes to SEO, web design, some of those things, we don't do those.
Right.
We've got a niche agency that we use in this for sign companies and sign shops, and we go through and just the same whenever it comes to SEO specialists. I want to make sure that there's an expert that is running the SEO department for our clients. So I went through the exact same process of finding people to do that. And at the end of the day, the easiest way is to say, okay, I have confidence in what it is that they look like. So just try one. And it's not going to take you too long to be able to go through and, okay, are they going to work? Because like I was saying earlier, we do stuff in a way that I feel like it's more partner. So I want to be an extension of your team.
Yeah.
There's some places that are more transactional. You're going to figure out real quick how does that style work for you and your business, what you want to do versus something else.
Yeah. Super different. So one of the things with being boutique and smaller, we can focus on these relationships, is some qualitative pieces that are hard to directly put your finger on, like you mentioned earlier, like the quality of your staff. How do you go about making sure that you have good staff members, you train them up, you manage them? Because I think the most difficult part of agency fulfillment is the team members, having good quality people, right? Reliable systems, processes.
I agree. It is a love-hate relationship with me. I came from an industry or business before. I've been in the digital marketing space now since 2008. And before that, I grew up in a family business as a sign company, which is why we got started in the niche side. And we had a lot of employees at any given time. And honestly, I have a love-hate relationship with having employees and not because of that same reason. It's like, okay, you've always got something that you're dealing with. But I'll tell you, the one thing that we've been able to find out a lot is that as we went through and we like most of the training that we've got in place right now, I've been able to go through and actually create for people. Now that's a different, I just took all my experience and dumped it in. And maybe there's a lot of agencies that will have that same type of experience. You went through some training, she went through all that and you're plugging your own thing in.
Yeah.
But what we've been able to do and what I find is the most beneficial is finding people that are a junior, what I would consider a junior type of a staff member, may have gone through a course already. They may have gone through something. So they're familiar. They're familiar, but they may not have any practical experience. So we can take that familiarity and then turn them into and train them up on Facebook or TikTok or whatever it might be. It becomes a much simpler process to get it exactly dialed into what we want. Now, I think a lot of times people, and I've been guilty of this as well, is like you want to go find somebody, whether it's a Filipino VA or whether it's somebody in the States, whatever it might be. I think we put so much into what we want them to be that they would almost be a unicorn sometimes.
Yeah, the Superman to do everything.
And I think by going through and breaking it down into the skill sets that you actually need, that's probably the other biggest thing for us that we've done, because so the white label side of our company is the ad factory. Was if you break it down into an assembly line factory process, that's the approach that we took whenever we were building everything out. So whether it's automations or ads or whatever. So this, but the people are exactly the same. So now I can take somebody who to anybody else may be a person that you wouldn't even maybe even consider. And because we can again train them up. And of course I'll have to throw a shout out to High Level and some programs like that, because with High Level, we actually have an internal training system that we just put in like a membership area. And so people come through it and we have that part as a first step as they go through into our systems. And then what we actually do is our main media buyers, we actually have some time dedicated that they actually review and work with some of our junior guys. So not only are they getting some hands-on, but they're also getting the back end of that for some additional training and certifications and that type of thing. There's a whole, it's interesting because there's a whole different logic in terms of learning mechanics. My wife knows more about this than what I do, but she's the one who explained it to me, to where as you go through and the methodology of how you can get people from A to Z. And that's the way that we've done it. It does take time though. And I think that's probably the only knock on that style. But what I'll tell you is I do believe that people are more loyal whenever you've taken them from where they are, help them gain a skill set, and they'll just be there with you because now you are technically, I see them as partners with us.
Yeah. And they're doing it your way instead of having to unlearn what they did at the other company.
I'll tell you, we
did it like this at the other place.
Yeah. And you're just like, okay, most of the time. And just as a side note, if you ever do have that, one thing I always tell guys is that, hey, you're going to give us 30 days to work through this. And then after 30 days, we'll take like your suggestions. Okay, we did it this way, but in the first 30 days, you got to do it this way. Don't worry about anything else.
Yeah.
But that does lead into some things that one of the initiatives that we really try to do, and I'd love to be able to do more with this on a bigger scale, but we hire a fair amount of military spouses. So you've got people you got people in the military that every 2 years, if you're a career guy, every 2 years, you're going to be moving or relocated, give or take. And if you're a spouse, you just give up whatever it is. So it's hard to get any kind of consistency. And so there are other populations and other types of things like that, hey, if you can get the right people or you can tap into those types of things, one, you can support your military in a way that usually isn't done. And number two, it gives you the ability to build that loyalty and they can do it anywhere. So I'll tell you, one of the most helpful things for me has been, so we've got a project manager that is based out of Portugal, Spain actually, but it's down towards the Portugal border. And they start about 6 hours before we do. So they're already cranking on stuff before it ever comes time to get to work.
Oh, that's awesome.
So you can leverage some of that. Now, I know people sometimes do that with online Filipino folks, but it is if you can start leveraging some of those things, that's the one good thing about time zones is you're leveraging it properly. I think you
Well
can get a
covered.
lot more done.
Yeah. Now we were in Miami a few weeks ago at Josh Nelson's 7-figure agency, and
Yes.
you won an award.
Yes.
Talk to us about that.
The 7-figure group, and for those of you who aren't familiar with it, I would highly encourage you to go out and pick up Josh Nelson's book as a appetizer because it's really good, especially in the agency side of things. But the 7-figure group has been great because they actually go through and they recognize and award people based on where you're at in business. So as you grow your business and as you have your recurring revenue and things continue to expand, the recognition, while we don't do it for that, is certainly something that makes you feel a little bit better amongst a group of your peers.
Yeah.
Because I think at the very early stages where I saw that happening, I didn't really realize the impact that it had. But now as the group has gotten larger, it's been really interesting to see how that's impacted. We crossed the recurring revenue threshold, and it was really awesome the way it turned out, to the fact that when you come back and you say, okay, heck, I want to do that again. So usually levels are about $10,000 a month recurring as you go. And so when we came back, I think since we've been back, we've added roughly 5,500 in recurring revenue, something along those lines. So we haven't been pushing super hard with it, but it's one of those things where it's okay, let's come July, whenever our next intensive is, we fully expect to be in that next par. And then the new niche agency that we've got, that we're going to be visiting the trade show coming up, we expect big things from it, to where we expect rapid growth from it, just because it's something that industry, like marketing services in that industry, doesn't really exist in the way that we think of it is. It's not like HVAC or Cairo or things like that.
Yeah.
So it's super exciting.
Yeah. One of the things I noticed different about Josh Nelson's 7-figure agency group is that you can have multiple people in the same area, right? There's multiple folks that serve chiropractors or home services, even multiple white label providers, right?
Yes.
Like you. Yet I see an abundance mindset of those that are the most successful, where instead of seeing the other folks as competitors, it's collaborative because of the size of the market, because of all these different kinds of reasons. What is it that distinguishes people who have that kind of mindset versus agencies that are maybe struggling and have the scarcity mindset? How do they make that shift, and what's that difference?
Making the shift, honestly, I think it's just a decision that you have, but most people don't come to it until you see, or until you have an experience in somebody. So I'll give you an example. The very first time that I saw that in practice is that you have a guy like Josh Nelson. He's running an agency doing $4 or $5 million a year or something like that, pretty big outfit. And I happen to have been in the 7-figure for a while. So I saw whenever some of the guys are smaller, like, hey, a guy comes in, I want to do HVAC and plumbing. Same thing that Josh does. And he looks at me, he's like, listen, man, there's 100,000 plumbers that I can only serve a handful of them.
Yeah.
And whenever I saw that part of it, it does shift whenever you have that experience. You're thinking one way, but if you see somebody that is not on a pedestal, but if you see somebody with authority that says, hey, this is what we do. And I think at the end of the day, what it comes down to is the people with an abundance mindset, the benefits of that is more opportunity, right? So there's so many people that I see now that, okay, so for example, you've got an agency like Josh's, and he runs into clients all the time that either one, they do exclusivity, so they can't service the industry, and they will refer it out to somebody in the group.
Yeah.
Well, it's like, why would you do that?
Yeah.
It's because I can't do anything with it anyway, and I'm helping somebody out. And oh, by the way, I'm going to send it to somebody who I believe won't do the same thing and burn people so they have that same bad experience. So I think that the abundance mindset, of course, there's a variety of reasons why people aren't there, but I do think it takes some kind of experience to see. When you go to an event like what Josh Nelson puts on, you see they have the whole award ceremony, and you see it's funny because you'll see people that are getting awards that are in the same industry. They're serving the same people, and they're just like, and they will call, like, they'll help each other back and forth.
It's crazy. Yeah.
It 100% is nothing like you would think that it would be.
I think that's incredible. What advice do you have for people that are not in seven-figure agency and maybe they're a consultant and they have a few clients, but they haven't actually built an agency because they're still stuck with their 5 or 6 clients and they haven't really been able to get past that?
Yep. Listen, I think at some point we may have all been in a shape like that at some point if we've worked hard enough or we've worked in it long enough. The very first thing that I would always recommend to people as they go through the process is to go on Amazon. Listen, I've read the book, even though that I feel like there's a lot of good things that you can get out of it. And it's something that's like, for what is it, $20?
Not
It's
even that. Yeah.
it's ridiculous the amount of value that you will pull out of it that will help you go ahead and stair step that. The funny thing is that Josh I think he does this about 2 or 3 times a year, to where he'll have a virtual event that you can just hop on Zoom, and I have literally paid thousands of dollars for the free events that he puts on.
Yeah, I couldn't believe it. I went to
Oh,
some of these free events he had like 2 or 3 years ago, and I thought there's for sure a catch. There's no way it's just going to be nothing but infomercials and selling products. But
yep.
I was surprised because he's giving value, and I'm thinking, okay, where's the catch? Where's the big sale? Where is he going to make this thing where you can buy this big thing? And it was nothing but value, and it was good people. It's just insane.
And I think the biggest component of what Josh and the 7-figure agency is that it's people who have been there and done that. So they've all been probably where you're talking about as a consultant.
Yeah.
And they can say, hey, here's the path. Now, they're obviously, if you're trying to build a 7-figure agency, and I would advocate that not everybody has that goal. Sometimes, hey, if we can make $300,000 a year where we live, and that's a really good living.
Yeah.
So wherever the goals are, though, is that path, there's people that have walked a path or some variation of that, and they've already got, I think as entrepreneurs or as business owners, the one thing that we have the biggest problem with is that we like to take stuff and say, unless we make it, it's not good enough.
Yeah.
And I would say, because we want to change things or we want to create things of our own. And I would say that this is the one time that Nelson's, from the book to some of his other things to the group, it's really worth just following the blueprint.
It is. You learn the hard way. It's like the rookie thinking they're going to outperform the pros.
It is. And so a lot of times whenever we talk to people, because obviously we talk to a lot of agencies, and we do our best to push people through that, because I'll tell you probably some of the best people that we work with have come through that program, and they have the right mindset. They have the right, foundation, right? They've got the right foundations to be able to succeed. And to be honest with you, the one thing that I probably like more than anything is that it forces you to have to consider niching down so that it simplifies things. And
huge.
I think everybody in the place has what they call legacy agency that has worked with anybody and everybody. And their legacy agencies are not anywhere near what some of their niche agencies are, just because they figured out the language, how to help them the best, the problems to solve, and a predictable way to do it.
All that. Yeah. Amen. If only the legacy agencies who think that if they niche down, they're going to somehow lose all this business. It's the very fact that they try to do everything is why they're not growing. But
yes,
the irony of that.
100%. It's if you've ever heard the phrase divide to multiply, that's exactly what's happening. And people get so freaked out about that stuff. But I can attest to you firsthand, just working through and seeing the different agencies and working. And of course, listen, we work with several 7-figure agencies on their back end whenever they need overflow work and that kind of stuff. And just the mentality and the mindset of that has been, I think, super helpful to so many people. And I can't remember how many agencies he's up to now, but I know he's wanting to help 500 agencies hit that $1 million mark. I think they're around 70, or 73 or something like that now.
Yeah, incredible.
It really is. So
fantastic. Josh Wheeler, White Label Ad Factory and Sign Marketing Pro Shop. How do people find you?
So you can always head over to whitelabeladfactory.com. That's if you're in the agency world. If you're an end user, we don't typically take things on there. But hey, if you're in a sign company or a graphics type business, you can find us at signshopmarketingpros.com.
Last question. What are all the little things in your background?
Oh, yes. Okay. So I think that anytime that you have, of course, with COVID, we all have our video conferences and things now that we do. These are things that I thought maybe would help just generate some conversations. So a lot of the things that you see along the top there are all either superheroes. Now, this right here, you'll see Uncle Sam and Abraham
You got
Lincoln
Bob's
and
big
George,
boy there.
right? I do. He's right there. So some of these guys, I put what I would consider heroes. Now, obviously, you've got your founding fathers that I think America is one of the experiments that have ever been designed and orchestrated is one. But we have a lot of conversations between our heroes and what I like the ad icon. So you see over here to my right, we have got some of our ad icons. So those are all Funko Pops, and they're good conversation points. So anytime that I get a chance to talk to people, you don't have to use Funko Pops or anything like this.
It's the Kool-Aid man there.
Kool-Aid man, that's it. So we try to have something actually, I used to have this, but until the Bengals went to the Super Bowl, I wasn't able to show this to anybody because they've been so bad for so long that we had to hide it. But I always try to tell people is find something in your backgrounds that you can start conversation pieces. That could be artwork, that can be a handful of other things. Me personally, I just like the color that it brings, but it's also part of my personality as well. I'm one of those geeky, goofy guys that you're going to have that I enjoy people. I enjoy people and working with them.
It comes through and it humanizes you. Fantastic, Josh. And it's been a pleasure knowing you over the last few years and watching you grow and watching you teach, especially in the 7-figure agency group.
Well, I appreciate it. It's always good to know you.
Go ahead. So everyone, thank you for joining Josh and I to learn about how do you do a white label agency and how do you be a good partner? How do you grow your agency by having great processes? We talked about the 5 key things that you need to know in being able to outsource properly or work with a partner, like in Josh's case. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Whatever your top takeaway is, I'd love for you to share that in the comments and let us know. And if there's a particular tip that you hear Josh mention, the best way to get that implemented is to write it down and share it. Because the last thing I want is for you to listen to all this knowledge that Josh has shared, and then you're off to the next video, and then you forgot. Because the best ideas in the world, if you don't implement, they're not worth anything. So Josh Wheeler, thank you so much for being on the Coach U Show.
Hey, thanks so much for having me.
All right, so Video VA, that is the end. We're now going to record the intro and these little hooks. So Josh, you and I, we're going to go back and forth with little 5-second, 10-second hooks that are like little trailers, little teasers that are encouraging people. Join Dennis and I on the Coach U Show. Or we just talked about this thing. Come check it out now. Those kinds of things. So we'll just riff back and forth for about a minute and a half. Sounds good?
Okay. Sounds good.
Guys, Josh Wheeler and I just spent all this time going through how do you set up a proper white label agency. 5 tips. Join us now.
Hey guys, it's Josh Wheeler. We just spent 30 minutes or something like that with Dennis Yu over on his podcast. And we talked about the 5 biggest things that causes white label providers problems whenever you're using their service. Come check it out.
Guys, you want to know the 5 things that cause agencies to fail? Josh Wheeler and I have just spent in-depth 45 minutes going through these. You're not going to want to miss it. Check it out now.
Hey guys, you want to know the top 5 ways that you can make white label work for you better? Come check it out over at the Dennis Yu, or I'm sorry, they're got the man is the
just say Dennis Yu and I just discuss it in detail for you right now, right? Something like that.
Okay.
Yeah, make it easy. All right, just do that again.
Hey guys, you want to know the top 5 ways to make white label work better for you and your agency? Dennis Yu and I talked about that for a little bit here. Come check it out.
Hey guys, you ever wonder about hiring a white label agency? Josh Wheeler and I just spent the better part of an hour going through all the secrets you need to know of what happens inside a white label agency. Come check it out now.
Hey guys, you know that real smart guy, Dennis Yu, that talks a lot about marketing stuff? He just drilled me for 45 minutes extracting the top 5 things that you can do to help your white label service provider do better and how to work with them easier. Hey, why don't you hop over and check it out on the Dennis Yu podcast.
Hey guys, I just drilled my friend Josh Wheeler on how to run a white label agency. You guys are going to want to check it out. If you are thinking about white labeling or hiring a white label, this is going to be key for you scaling your agency. Check out what Josh and I have to share right now.
Hey guys, have you been looking to do white label work or hire a white label company? Dennis, you and I just got on a this is a difficult spot, man.
Yeah.
Like usually I'm pretty
Because
good
it
at
requires a
this.
higher energy level. It's a
Usually,
little harder. Yeah.
usually I'm pretty good at this. Okay. Hey guys, if you've been considering hiring a white label, but don't really know how to pick the best one, Dennis, you and I talk about that over on the podcast. Why don't you come check it out?
All right, good. Now we're going to do a few funny faces, okay?
Funny faces. Okay.
So we're just going to pull the frames out of them, all right? You ready?
Okay. Yep.
Excitement.
Oh, excitement. Dude, that's hard. What is excitement?
Or just hold your hands up or surprise. Okay,
Man,
now point up with inquisitiveness. All right, and now anger. All right, cool, that'll work.
Right.
Good enough. We'll be able to cut out something out of that. Yeah, it'll take us a couple of weeks. We're a little behind. It might even take us 3 or 4 weeks because we've got so many of these podcasts in there. But the stuff we have is evergreen. And plus that gives you time to get some of these other pieces together so we can put the links in there.
Absolutely. We'll go through and I'll get that. You want me to send over links so we can pop into
yeah, whatever's links are good, whatever is easy for you.
Okay.
Then unlike most people that do podcasts, we chop them up into different pieces and then we push these little pieces out. And so some people may want to watch this whole thing, but we have a lot of young adults and most people, they just watch a couple minutes at a time. And so that's good because then they'll see you a few times and it's like, oh, this Josh Wheeler guy, I've seen him a few times. And after that, then they're like, I've discovered people need to see you a few times. You're not going to just sit down and just commit to 45 minutes. They need to see, like, oh, he said something good there. Oh, I saw him again with Josh Nelson. Oh, I saw him over here. Okay, I'm going to actually sit down and listen to what he has to say this whole time. So I think that's how people think. So you just can't get them from they don't know who you or I are to just, they just won't do that.
I tell you, I wish you could convince people in the agencies we work with when we are running agency ads. I wish that you could convince them of the same thing because you want to talk about the most frustrating people to run ads for. It's the agency people. It's not the clients. It's for the agencies.
Oh yeah, I would never touch that unless they were established and they're good people.
Tell me if you could tell me 3 tricks to a podcast. So I'll tell you, we're just starting us up with the Sign Shop Marketing Podcast or Sign Shop Success Podcast rather. And we've got a couple guests lined up, but because we haven't done them before, I haven't really hosted a lot. I would love your insight because we've got the industry association president before the trade show that's willing to come on and do something. Yeah. And I just want to make sure that it really it's clean and they're super excited because
do it in person?
We're probably going to do this one in Zoom, but we are going to do one in person actually at the trade show. So we're going to do it live at the trade show.
Okay. Are you doing the Zoom one first?
Zoom one first. Yes.
Okay, good. So capture that. You can follow the same kind of format we have here. Make sure that you and they have good sound. So we can use Descript. We really like Descript because it just does all sorts of nice sorts of things like I showed you.
Yep.
And then if you have enough time, pull out the snippets and the things that you talked about so that when you're in person, you can do a bunch of little promo things that are more like trailers to get people to watch the whole podcast. And the key is that you're using when you're with that industry association person or you're with what we call a lighthouse, like someone who's really well known, you're creating what's called implied endorsement. So it doesn't even matter that much exactly what you say, but the fact of them seeing you with those other people is so key. So you need to anchor that into their subconscious. So that's why these little snippets that you run as like a TikTok or Facebook or LinkedIn or turn into a blog post or 7 things that I learned from Mr. who's the industry association president. There's so many different ways that you can repackage it. But when this is especially for people under 40, if they have 4 or 5 of these touches, especially from that guy and then the other people, that's why you build a topic wheel. So you just surround them. That's why the niche thing is so powerful, right? Because in that niche, you've connected so many of these other people that the odds of an overlap of authority and higher frequency because of the different kinds of content, that if someone who's a sign shop owner or they print banners or whatever, you are the obvious choice, especially because it's a small market and it's not like chiropractors or dentists like you're mentioning before. So it should be pretty easy for you to dominate, especially with high authority content. And then when you are with them in person, film those vertically mobile and make sure you have good sound. So if you do that, you have everything you need to repurpose. And then, you have your content VAs or whoever you have on the inside managing your content factory. That'll grow your agency.
Well, hopefully that we just, based on your suggestion with the Rode Mobile, we just bought we've got the 2-pack coming in so that we could do podcasts live.
Yeah,
And sound
wireless
all
Go
that.
2 is fantastic.
So hopefully everything goes well. But those are really good tips, and I'll follow the process here. Promo side of things were real. Like I never thought to actually take a few minutes just to run a couple promos like that.
Josh, the thing is, all these guys, they hear, oh, you need to start a podcast. So then they do all the podcast sorts of things. And it's not like any of those tips aren't good, like how do you set it up and the tools that you use and publishing using like transistor.fm or Anchor or whatever. Those are all good. But I noticed one thing that kills 99% of podcasts. You go look at their channel or whatever, and they have no traffic. Why do they have no traffic?
Because either one, they're not telling people about it, but usually the ads, exposure, people don't know about it.
They're focused so much on the production and scheduling it, and now they're on to the next guest, and now their VAs are doing this thing, but they're trying to run their agency. So this podcast thing is something they want to do it, but they're not really putting in the proper effort. So the marketing of it ends up just falling away. And I think the best way, and no one's doing this really, is using $1 a day to promote the podcast. And so that blows people's minds, because if you're an agency owner or you're some other kind of expert and you started a podcast, you probably think ads are for ads. Like ads are to get people to buy something. Like, why would you promote free content? Why would you promote highlights of what happened in the podcast? Because that's how you build relationships, right? Yes. Especially for service things. Now, if you're selling corrugated aluminum that's a commodity on Amazon or whatever, at Home Depot, then yeah, they're all the same thing. But in a service business, people make a decision based on all sorts of personality and other kind of factors. And so any kind of service, professional service expertise, not every chiropractor is the same. Not every real estate agent's the same. Not every sign shop's the same, because I could just go to Kinko's or go to something like, why there's a difference, right?
Yeah, absolutely, there is.
By not promoting who you're associated with, by not promoting the fact that you are increasing your industry expertise and your connections, by going to the conference, by not promoting your clients, you're missing out. And the other part too is that this is the second biggest mistake, is that most agencies think, oh, I heard that you need to get testimonials, so I'm going to try to interview these people on video and say, what do you like most about working with Sign Shop Marketing Pro? And of course, it's going to come out with a fake answer, because it's a forced thing. You just tell the vibe is different. It's just an ad, right? It's forced. But if you treat it like you're interviewing them and you're treating them like an expert, it's going to come off different, because it's going to feel like a story. It's going to be more helpful. It's going to be more relevant to other folks who own sign shops, because it'll be how Bob was able to achieve this result with his sign shop by doing Facebook ads or whatever it is. That's not a testimonial. It's actually saying, here's how somebody achieved this valuable business result, and now he's going to share how he did it. Oh, and by the way, here's the checklist and how he did it. So it ties into all the checklists and whatever that you're openly sharing. And that's how you get clients.
Personally, I like that a lot. And I've seen Josh do it with people that, like, I've been scouring the trade association, like, magazines to say, okay, who were the people that who were promoted by them, and then just calling them and saying, hey, you want to be a guest on the podcast? We just want to talk to you about how you did X.
So when you're in the exhibit hall area, whatever, with all the other vendors, you're probably one of the only digital marketing vendors there. So what you do is you interview all the other people, and you act like you actually are trying to elevate them and ask interesting questions. And then you promote that interview with these other folks. And because they're not competitive, it creates a partner opportunity. It's an implied partner opportunity, because then all these other people who are customers of this other vendor see you. And because of this association, which we call implied endorsement, because you're interviewing them, now that their trust and whatever is conveyed onto you. If they don't know who you are, but they know they've been working with this other vendor for however long.
I think that's the other side that we were going to try to make a big play. There's only the sign industry is a low growth in terms of it doesn't grow very fast. So most of the suppliers and things are like trading customers back and forth. But I had thought to get them involved, so okay, and basically do the same thing so that they would be referral sources, because hey, if I can help the sign shop sell more stuff, they're going to be the ones to benefit.
It goes both ways. It's a huge referral thing. Yeah.
Yep. So anyway, hey, I appreciate so much your time and the help. Hopefully I can provide some insights into some things that might help on that side.
The most valuable thing, just share your journey, just little authentic. Don't wait until perfection. Don't wait until you've achieved this massive result, but you would not believe how valuable those little pieces along the way are, because you're never going to remember them later. 6 months later, you won't remember, right? So you have to document them along the way. So whether you publish them or not, I find it's great, just like little 15-second and 1-minute videos along the way. And things that you think are mundane are going to be super insightful for other people. I've literally published tons of stuff that I think is mundane, and other people say, wow, that was mind-blowing, right? Like the stuff I shared when we were in Miami together, right? I had 2 sessions and I spoke. I thought that stuff was obvious because I've been doing it for a while, but other people thought it was amazing.
It's funny how that works, isn't it?
So the stuff that you think is mundane, I promise you that is not how people will see it. It's mundane to you.